Sustainable Energy Electrician Registered Apprenticeship Program, and a U.S. Department of Labor funded internship. We operate in 4 states with physical locations currently, as well as across the nation. The 4 physical locations are in Maryland through a partnership with Maryland Justice Project and Coppin State University. We recently expanded to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as well as in Georgia, in Columbus, Georgia. And our headquarters is in rural Dillwyn, Virginia. As McKenna Dunbar said with Sierra Club, I sit on the board of directors with Virginia Energy Efficiency Council. I am the chairwoman of the Workforce Committee, as well as I sit on the board of directors for the Virginia Renewable Energy Alliance. And I'm extremely happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lavisha. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, I'm Lavisha Allen Rollins. I'm the Executive Director of C5, which stands for Concerned Citizens of Charlotte City County, as well as our business workforce business sector of Project Black, which is working to get people pre-certified in what we call BMAP, which is 6 areas of green infrastructure that focuses on getting people in rural communities and minorities back into the building trades and helping them to understand the opportunities that are available for them within the new movement of green jobs. And also, we are getting into weatherization. We're actually actively working on homes in our community to do practicing weatherization, monitoring the impact it makes. And so we are trying to implement the very things that we're trying to get people more involved in. So I'm definitely excited to be on the panel and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Just to give an idea to all the public what we want to do here and what we're trying to achieve here with this panel is like usually in particular in counties, in rural counties, when we hear about economic development and opportunities, we always get projects that usually pollute, and they pollute a lot, such as a landfill. So, and when the county comes and talk with the community, tell them this is the only thing that we're able to get for this county here. What we're going to show here in this panel is other opportunities for economic development that they are not polluting, and on the contrary, are creating jobs. And you will see through the examples how these opportunities and notice how you will be able to take advantage of these opportunities and hopefully replicate something similar in the different counties where you are living. So to start with that, let's talk a little bit about how this happened and why these type of opportunities are available right now. So McKenna, would you mind to describe and talk a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act and what type of funds are available?
Absolutely. As many of us know, the Biden-Harris administration passed a monumental and inaugural climate bill called the Inflation Reduction Act, which essentially has created millions of actions and opportunities in the nation that we call home as it relates to climate, green energy infrastructure, supporting healthcare needs, as well as other key initiatives to increase well-being and infrastructural fortitude within the United States. Particularly, I'd like to introduce 2 significant initiatives under the Inflation Reduction Act that specifically targets at the realm of building decarbonization that will not only benefit Virginia residents, because the leaders of this group are based in Virginia, but American residents as a whole. These are called the Home Energy Rebate Programs alongside TREC and EAT. And I'll get into the acronym specifically, because I know they can be quite confusing. The Home Energy Rebate Programs include programs titled Homes and Here. And before getting into this, both of these programs and initiatives will play crucial roles in improving energy efficiency across the state while increasing opportunities for workforce development. As it pertains to the Homes and Here program, specifically Homeowner Managed Energy Savings and the Home Electrification and Appliance Rebate Act, you may be asking, what are they? Virginia specifically has received $188 million out of $4.5 billion allocated for both homes and here for a total of nearly $9 billion in federal funding to establish a consumer rebate program aimed at helping both home buyers and renters reduce their energy consumption and costs. And these rebates cover partial to full expenses of home energy improvements, including things like duct sealing, HVAC systems, lighting upgrades, insulation, window place replacements, you name it. And both single family and multifamily homes are eligible for these rebates, which will be available, at least in Virginia, starting in mid 2025. You may be asking, what are the key components of these programs? That is, under the Homeowner Managed Energy Savings Program, it offers rebates ranging from $2,000 to $8,000, depending on the amount of overall energy efficiency improvements. And all income groups can qualify with greater incentives available for low to moderate income households. As it relates to the home electrification and appliance rebates, this provides up to $14,000 for upgrades like heat pumps and other electrical devices, which can also include $1,750 for a heat pump water heater, $840 for an electric stove, $840 for an electric clothes dryer, and if required, the household can also receive up to $4,000 for an upgraded breaker box, $1,600 for insulation, ventilation, and ceiling, and even $2,500 for upgraded wiring. And energy efficiency improvements fundamentally are one, if not the most cost-effective ways to permanently reduce energy bills, greenhouse gas emissions, and ease the strain on our energy grid. And by using up to 20% of the $188 million for administrative costs, Virginia really does have the opportunity to build a robust and equitable program that will continue to deliver these benefits long after the federal funding opportunities are gone. And these programs specifically present a fantastic opportunity, but to maximize their impact, we need to spread the word, particularly to low to moderate income communities and multifamily properties. And the reason I'm getting into the weeds here and speaking for a while compared to the contributions I'll offer to the panel later on is because I am in several coalitions that are advocating for statewide one-stop shops that will streamline access to renewable energy incentives, energy audits, vetted contractors, and project financing. But there are bottlenecks, and these are narratives that we'll hear straight from leaders in the community for not only renewable energy transitions, but for equitable implementation and justice too. And, you may be asking again, why are these programs so important? And this is due to buildings being responsible for over a quarter of Virginia's total greenhouse gas emissions. About half of these emissions are generated on site by burning fossil fuels like natural gas, propane, and heating oil, which not only contribute to climate change, but also have serious public health risks. This is not only a workforce concern. This is not just a public health concern. It's not just a justice concern. It's a fundamental concern, especially because we do not have federal mandates related to indoor air quality. Burning methane gas significantly increases asthma risks amongst other layers. And to transition away from the energy efficiency technology specifically, the way that the Inflation Reduction Act is bridging technology with workforce and offering incentives for states across the country to promote these sorts of programs is within something called TREC, Training Residential Energy Contractors Program. This initiative in Virginia received around $3.5 million to support workforce development and reduce the cost of training contractor employees who will be crucial, again, crucial to the success of homes and HERE programs. We'll hear more about that actual implementation rather than theory directly from Ray and Lavisha, but the TREC program is intended to provide access to tools and certifications while also ensuring that the workforce development is equitable while partnering with community organizations to promote inclusivity. And so the goal of TREC is to connect trained energy contractors and their affiliates with DOE-funded projects focusing on home energy retrofits, appliance upgrades, electrification, and other initiatives. And this really will help ensure, no matter where you are in the country, that there is a qualified workforce ready to carry out the upgrades needed to make homes more efficient and electrified. I want you all to ask yourselves, and I ask this question plenty of times when I present, what percentage of our lives do we spend inside as Americans? Some of you may be thinking 60%, some of you 80, some of you 40%. I heard a lot of 85% recently. The actual number is 91 to 93% of our lives are spent indoors. And that really shows the importance of focusing on improving indoor air quality, implementing programs like Homes in Here effectively, and looping in qualified contractors that come from the regions that they serve in order to promote economic development in rural communities. I will speak more on opportunities out of the Inflation Reduction Act later. And thank you, Gustavo, for the question.
No problem. And another point that is also important is that this will bring some savings to the households by having the house being weatherized or more energy efficiency. Your costs for using energy would be significantly reduced, which is another important something to mention. Let's move on and let's talk. I have a question for Ray and Lavisha. So rural communities often face distinct challenges, such as a limited infrastructure, fewer jobs opportunities, and geographic isolation. What obstacles have you encountered when tailored workforce approaches for these communities? And how have you adapted your strategies to ensure that rural workers have equitable access to energy efficiency and solar job opportunities? Right? And after Lavisha.
All right. So what we've encountered at Flipping is a lot of awareness has not been established. Of course, engagement is not there when you're talking about rural communities, as well as access to services, right? And when you look at those top three issues, and we drill down and we start really investigating why is there zero awareness. And when we're talking about, let's say, solar workforce development, for me, we have solar farms coming into our rural area because there's plenty of land, right? But they're not using the local workforce, right? So we have solar farms coming, but the people that are there to work are not aware that there are potential opportunities. And then what's needed. So there's no engagement on that level. And there's also no access to services because it is a rural community. So then we have to focus on the policy and regulation. What is keeping those things out? There are no community benefit agreements when these deals are made at the board of supervisor levels or city council levels. If they are, they're not enforced, right? And then we have to look at, all right, let's say we bring training to those areas. The next obstacles are going to be childcare, are going to be food, are going to be transportation. When we look at Buckingham County, there is no actual licensed and registered childcare in there. I ran into this problem with a recent project that we did with Department of Labor, and we have to drastically pivot, right? And then how I pivot is we look at the ABCDs, right? And that's accessibility, that's benefits, the community, and the development of these programs, right? And so when you look at the ABCDs, we really dig into how can we leverage our opportunities here in the rural communities, right? There are people that want to work, right? They don't have the access to the services. They may just need fuel cards to get to work. And then we have to start building that community and developing that economy of workforce where we tap into, let's say, Virginia Works, right? So as we look at these obstacles that we're facing and we begin to mitigate them, it's not just a one thing, one and done, and it's not just one issue. We have to tackle all of them. Um, I would say collectively. And that's how we're tailoring our workforce development approaches in our community. And I'm using the same replicable model as we expand outside of Buckingham County or outside of the state of Virginia. It's working. The strategy is is a robust one, but it takes, I would say, a sector strategy or a sector partnership or an industry partnership to make all of this work and to break down those barriers that we're continually running into. But I will say policy is a big part of this and how workforce has been administered over the years and continually is administered. Um, and also in our response is registered apprenticeships, but also not just a standard registered apprenticeship. We put many supports on the back end of our registered apprenticeships, right? Because there isn't many across the state. When you think of registered apprenticeship, many people just think of the IBEW, right? Or unions. They don't really think of employer-based apprenticeship or educational training provider apprenticeships. And a lot of people, if you're coming from Buckingham or Cumberland, you may not have transportation to get to Richmond to that JATC. That's just what it is. And so access to those needs to be increased. Flipping is an intermediary in the state of Virginia for registered apprenticeship. And another thing is how we've adapted our approaches. We're mobile. So we do have an on-site training center, but we're 100% mobile, and we do offer online curriculum as well as an intermediary in the space. And then also we do internships because there are many people that don't want to spend 2 or 4 years in a training and they need to get to work. They need family sustaining wages, right? And so through that, we've learned to rapidly accept through an accelerated and compressed program to train, credential, and then connect with employers and employment connections through us, and then still offer that supportive services piece to ensure that the employee is retained, and there's also assistance for that employer. So you also got to look at employer initiatives as well outside of trying to tackle the regular obstacles. How can you incentivize additional partners within the program? And now I'll pass that mic to Lavisha.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of what Ray says, I think sometimes people separate urban and rural as if they can't work together, that they're different in totality, and it's not really. We work together to make a bigger collective. And so with the rural community, as Ray said, that there is situations where we do have people that assume because we have all this land that we can take in for infrastructure. And also there's a term called sacrificial zone because our population density is not very high, that we are at the dispense of being able to put large developments, industrial developments, hazardous developments out in our area, that we can support it because it's easier, more accessible, where it's only 100 people within a mile radius versus 1,000 or 10,000. So they use that sacrificial connotation that if we put this here, that this is something that's for the greater good, but it's also destroying our natural resources. So I think the other part of that is like when those developments come and we talk about, like Ray said, the jobs, right? Those jobs are typically not jobs that people in rural communities can do. And so like Ray said, we as C5 and Project Black learned from our fighting of this infrastructure that they also said in the public documents that we have nothing to offer. There's no skilled labor, so we have to bring in skilled labor. And so we wanted to create our own initiative. And as Ray said, there are barriers that we have to face, but we're like with any other type of community or area, that you have to deal with. There are always going to be barriers. And so we try to accommodate those barriers, as Ray said, bringing in mobile workforces. We're currently doing our own weatherization because of the things that we'll talk about, regarding the barriers that we're facing as trying to get into weatherization so we can do the work for our community, right? So because we understand that there's a lot of things that have to happen. And so we're taking initiative and doing the actual work. And that led us to pre-apprenticeship. A lot of times when we talk about workforce, right? A lot of the times people are transitioning into this field. They want to change, they want to do something, be part of the greater good. They can't, because they can't just give up a job and then go into a training where they're not being paid. Their livelihood still continues on. And we have to make that transaction of being able to transition easier. But also in the rural community, when they're bringing all of these developments, we can have developments that are beneficial for the rural community. There are ways that we can integrate it with farming. We can Farming is one of our largest industries in rural communities, and yet we're not talking about electrifying the components of a farm. The sprinklers, how to make them more efficient, how that involves plumbing, how to make things more electrified. That's an electrical trade. These are all things that can be integrated in the rural community, but it's not being innovative. And so what we're trying to do, and I would also echo to say that Flip Inc. is doing, we're being innovative about providing solutions that can create a clean energy, but also build on the greatness of being in a rural community and not taking away those natural resources. So our approach is, number one, meet people where they are, as Ray alerted to, but also train them on the basic skills so that when they're face to face with an employer, they're ready to go. They're not having to train them from the ground up. So we get them ready, and we focus on the things that they're needed. Electrical, mechanical, plumbing, farming. We focus on those things and we get them ready. And I think that if organizations would work with CBOs, they will know that we're identifying the barriers for you so that we're taking that part out so that they can go straight to work. So just because you hear rural, as we say country, that does not mean there's no opportunity.
Thank you very much, Lavisha and Ray, for the answers. As we can start noticing, these have sort of like tentacles that start expanding, and there are more opportunities for job creation when this type of projects are started developing. But going back to McKenna, McKenna, how can advocates and environmental organizations influence the process that their state energy offices led as it pertains to distribution of these Inflation Reduction Act or IRA funds?
Wonderful question. One of the primary ways for current environmental organizations to be involved in this process is through the direct program design and stakeholder engagement feedback sessions that they're offering, and creating your own ways to interact with the state energy office, specifically with emailing, sending in detailed recommendations of coalition priorities that you may have. And for us, as in Sierra Club, Flip Inc., and Project Black, alongside an active coalition, several active coalitions focused on energy efficiency for equitable energy efficiency for all. We are prioritizing a target population identification specifically for the home energy rebates stakeholder engagement process, with precisely delineating target populations and emphasizing households with 0 to 60% area median income who are part of disadvantaged and underserved communities, and specifically those that are relying on oil or electricity for heating and or oil and fossil fuel for heating, and using advanced census data analytics and environmental justice mapping tools to optimize prioritization. We are also considering and have been presently ideating how to integrate and to offer suggestions for integrating a mandatory stipulation for the prime and or subcontractors of the entity chosen for the state energy office to directly implement the Homes and Here program, to source at least 40% of their workforce from the local community. This will help ensure that economic benefits are retained within the locality, which promotes community engagement and economic uplift, especially for rural communities. And to enhance the impact of this local workforce requirement, the program should for sure incorporate project labor agreements, PLAs, as a foundational element in the contracting process. And for those who don't know, A project labor agreement is a pre-hire collective bargaining agreement that establishes the terms and conditions of employment for a specific construction project. We also believe in, of course, are having this presentation in BIPOC-led workforce development and leadership, specifically under the realm of Justice 40, prioritizing the allocation of funding towards accredited BIPOC-led workforce programs, which will align with these objectives and ensure equitable workforce development while reinforcing the integration of historically marginalized communities into the renewable energy transition. We are also envisioning that, for example, with the project's labor agreements, include partnerships, as Ray alluded to earlier, a diverse mix of different ways of instructions and accrediting individuals with partnerships with local unions and workforce development organizations and with the state to access a skilled labor pool to tackle all these homes that need to be decarbonized in order to meet our goals. This is not just something that we want, but it's something that is required under the Virginia Clean Economy Act for decarbonization priorities specifically. By 2045, within the next generation, we will need to have 100% of our electricity come from renewable energy. And this is a lofty goal and something that is intertwined with equity and really at the end of the day, engaging with local and grassroots community-based organizations to ensure that the retrofitting and weatherizations efforts are culturally relevant and well received and are sustainable. That requires established feedback loops with the community, which are very much lacking for plenty of entities across the country. And leaders like Ray and like Lavisha are a prime example of how important wraparound services are and meeting people where they are.
Thank you very much. For the public that are watching this, please feel free to send your questions through the comments or the chat box, and we will answer those at the end when we finish with the presentations of the different panelists. But thank you for the questions that have been sending. Let's now for Ray and Lavisha. Would you mind to elaborate a little bit on how you're gonna plan to use the funds?
Okay. So Flipping plans to use funds that will be allocated through IRA through increasing our internal human infrastructure. We can't facilitate these programs without having personnel in place and staff, right? We are a small organization, but we're mighty in impact. Another use of funds, of course, would definitely be to hit multiple level diversification of the renewable energy industry. And I say multiple level because when you look at the amount of organizations that are solar installers, it's not diversified. When you look at the educational level for trainers, it's not diversified, right? We've been asked in Virginia, me specifically and my trainer, to train at other educational institutions because it's not diversified, right? And they're not hitting the numbers. And one thing about Flipping is our curriculum is challenging enough for industry professionals, but digestible enough for the special and vulnerable populations we serve, which are your BIPOC, your women, your veterans, you're just as impacted as well as your rural communities. And in addition to use of that multiple level diversification, for what we train for, using those funds, we'd also use those funds to offer in-house supportive services, right? Because we're making these specific siloed partnerships, and that is, I think, where our niche market is and why we're able to expand so fast and to make the impact we do make. But if we're able to offer in-house, it would streamline these access to services even more so, because then we won't have to turn away a potential participant that comes from across the tunnel, as we say in Virginia, which is your Hampton Roads area, right? That may want to take our class that's in the city of Charlottesville, where we have a relationship with a training agreement. So those are the things that I see where our strongest use of funds could possibly be, most certainly be at that point. And then also expanding what we offer through our apprenticeship programs. We're seeking to expand those opportunities as well, because apprenticeship does lead to licensing, as well as our internship leading to certification and credentialing. So we want to expand those opportunities for people everywhere, so we don't have to turn away anybody, because I believe if we help one, we've helped many at that point, right? And then I will allow Lavisha to comment as well.
Yes. So if we were to, get access to the IRA funds, we would definitely expand our pre-apprenticeship program so that we're able to not only help rural communities in Charles City, but we can become a catalyst for other rural communities so we can show them that this element works, right? It's not just a one-stop element that works for this county. It can be deployed wherever it is. That'll allow us to expand our training operations, get more people involved. Like right now, because of the limitations with the amount of services we provide and the time and efforts that goes into planning, we would need funding to help us expand it to more people. Ideally, we're doing 1 to 2. It'd be nice to do at least 4 trainings a year, but we can really start to see if we can get more access, more awareness. Marketing is another tool because we want to work with other CBOs so that we are empowering the communities that we're impacting, not just people that look like us and people that are going through the same transitions, right? Because developments are happening every day. So how can we empower you to make sure that you are having people in your area that could potentially do these developments and have skill work? So we'll be using it, number one, for pre-apprenticeship expansion to get our program into a larger model. We're already in the high school in Charles City County, so we would like to go into other rural high schools and show them. I think one of the things in the nomenclature is what we call a narrative that we're trying to change, is that just because you come from a rural community does not mean that you are less than opportunities to you. So we want to make sure they are aware of that just because you are from a rural community, you live there, you can still have access to opportunities. The number 3 is we want to do hands-on training, right? It's great in principle to go in a classroom and simulate, right? I know we're in the AI area. I know that we are in the area of opportunity of technological advancements, but it only takes one good natural disaster to make us realize how important man truly is when it comes to things not being able to be done because we don't have access to power. So having people who can actually do the work is going to be, a very vital part of getting over this transition into a clean economy. So we've got to have those people who build the infrastructure out because we don't have that in place, or the ones that we do have are failing. So we want to be able to get more people and trained and actually do the actual hands-on work, which means we have to be able to get contracts to handle that work. So our goal with the IRA funding is basically to make more awareness and make sure that they know what's available to them and do more community engagement. That's another topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Community engagement, I just want to make sure we are very clear we're on the same baseline. Community engagement is not sending out a public notice in the newspaper. That's not a community engagement. Community engagement is not sending someone to a church and telling them about it. That's not community engagement. Those are called announcements. True community engagement is actually having meetings, actually having environments where they can come and learn and talk to you face to face. It's a dialect back and forth so you can hear their concerns or not. That takes a lot of time, money, and manpower. So I would also be, using that for administrative costs so that we can have people go out into the community and actually educate people and allow them to be welcome so that they get a thorough understanding about what all this does to their community in totality. So that's what we would do if we got access to the IRA funding.
Thank you very much. And yes, you're totally right, Lavisha, with those announcements. Let's move on because we're running out of time. Ray and Lavisha, when you think about collaboration between organizations, government entities, and private companies, it's crucial for the success of green workforce programs. Could you share an example of a successful partnership that significantly enhanced the impact of your work?
Okay, so I had one in mind, but I can't just stick to one, right? So it's like a snowball effect. So last year we got awarded funding from Albemarle County, and that was their community community grant as well. And that was a great partnership as we're looking to expand that. Um, our Go Solar training program partnership, it helped erect that Go Solar training partnership when we had the program, when we had the partnership with the city of Charlottesville. That allowed us to tap into their supportive services as well. And then what we're most notably known for as well last year is the United States Department of Labor um, Building Pathways to Infrastructure grant, which was $1,983,701. I wrote that grant, and I also designed the program or project, which is called the FACER project, and that stands for Flips Accelerated Clean Energy Reentry Project, where we heavily focus on 7 counties in the state of Virginia, which is Congressional District 5. And they are Albemarle County, Cumberland, Buckingham, Fluvanna, Prince Edward, Lunenburg, as well as city of Charlottesville also. And what is important about that is that it is a worker-centered sector strategy, right? And that is our sector partnership, as Gustavo just asked the question. And we have where it focuses on engagement, recruitment, enrollment, as well as training, credentialing, employment, and then sustainability of the participants. This has been something that has propelled Flipping. Um, a lot of people ask me, how did you know what was needed in the project? And I literally hit every goal. And it's because I knew what I needed when I reentered society. Right. And so I think that's very significant because I represent a lot of the groups. I'm BIPOC, I'm a woman, I'm a veteran, I'm just as impacted. Born and raised in a rural community, and our office is still located and headquartered in that rural community. And so we not only meet people where we are from there, we live there, we work there, right? So that has enhanced our work. It has allowed people to know about Flipping. The U.S. Department of Labor has been instrumental in ensuring that we have a platform to highlight our work and to showcase it. I'd also say an additional partnership is Sierra Club that we have with the Sierra Club Virginia chapter, and they have been instrumental in making sure that people are aware of us, that our name is spoken in rooms where we're not even present in. And I always say, a little term I say is they're positively conspiring behind our back, right? And I really appreciate that. And so those are the types of partnerships that we seek. Those are the types of partnerships that amplify our green workforce programs. And those are the types of partnerships that you want to have in place to ensure that the people you train and the people that these investments are set up for actually receive them. And that is of utmost importance to me, because we have so much money flowing through. People and organizations will forget that the money is supposed to be for certain populations, for certain groups, for certain communities, and that they can be at the forefront of giving the right tools, education, and training, and then access to these mechanisms, that they can make that same impact within their own communities. And so I'm a big advocate for that. And so when Flipping was not allowed at the table, we created our own, and then we included the chairs. That's the best way I can put it, because it was a struggle. Even seeking our own accreditation was a struggle, and those are things we seek to change. Change is best recognized and acknowledged at the lowest levels. And so I was one that had to seek our own accreditation. So being just as impacted, a lot of licensing and certifications is not set up for the people we train, or the populations that have barriers. Some of them don't even have criminal backgrounds, but barriers can be literally trying to get to the training, making sure you can take a week off for the training. It doesn't sound like much if you have PTO, but what if you don't and you're an hourly and you want to better your life? We need to have partnerships in place where we can access funding. We need to have partnerships in place where we can be flexible on our training to ensure that, again, these federal investments, these state investments that are meant for those people receive them.
Thank you. Lavisha, go ahead.
Yeah, so the collaborations are essential in making sure that the priorities are met. I think a lot of times with the collaborations that are the as I think McKenna used the term bottlenecked, right? A lot of the funding is streamlined and funneled down, and it gets to certain places, and then the access kind of dwindles, right? There's a lot of things that kind of stop, that kind of makes that hard. But what happened, I think, to kind of curve that is to be able to have more direct relationships and build on those collaborations with government entities, organizations like my organization, as well as Ray's organization, also private companies. I think we need to all work together, but also talk more directly. I think sometimes that the collaborations that have been successful for our teams when we work with large universities, the Sierra Club as well, bringing awareness to us about opportunities that are coming across their table. And then as a CBO, we're able to talk to our community because we everything that comes across the table may not work for us, right? So we have to look at it, diagnose it, and then we talk to our community and we get their feedback. And then once we see that that works, then the collaborations begin because that starts to pull. What parts do we need? The government entities that we need as well and private companies are great. I think that we need to be more proactive because a lot of the collaborations that we create, they tend to happen after the developments come, right? So it's not being more, we're being reactive versus proactive. So I think the collaborations, in my opinion, will be successful if we actually work more together during the planning stages and more during the time where it's not always about trying to fix the problem. I think that if we were to stay in direct dialogue all the time, that would be great. And so for us, successful has been like working with the university, Sierra Club, working with local government organizations on the federal, state, and local level, because it also helps us to kind of make sure we're covering all bases with all the needs that are met. And as well as, having them talk about what they offer, right? I think that if the government agencies and the bigger companies would be more forthcoming about what they want and get more direct answers, they'll be more successful. So for us, when we've had a successful situation, we all came to the table saying what we're bringing and what we can do, and then we can build from that pot and show our strengths and what we can take on. So successful partnerships will enhance the work if we're talking together the entire time. And so I feel like if we continue the collaborations, it'll make greater success stories for us. But I would be remiss if I don't talk about the fact that we need to be more proactive on the front side so that we can create those successful partnerships. And for us, that means talking now, talking when the funding is starting to come out. It would have been actually nice when the first announcement was, made out, like, let's talk about this. Let's talk more about that. I think those are the things, because when you're talking to the community, I think sometimes as the subject matter experts or the leaders, we tend to not realize that there's things that they want to bring to the table that we may not have considered. And so I also feel like if you have community representatives that are also there, that's a great way also, because that builds a tie-in and makes the community feel involved in that process. So if I had to kind of put this all in layman's terms, you want to have your community investment, so representatives, you want to have CBOs like myself and Ray Elliott, you want to have outside organizations like Sierra Club, academia is great as well as state and local government. So I think if we put those collaborations together now and continue to do that and work together, and as projects comes, that's something that we can talk about as maybe as a case study, I think we'll get better results. So I think that the collaboration is definitely needed. I just think the processes need to be reworked a bit.
Yeah, thank you, Lavisha. For the ones that are sitting at that table, or I have the opportunity or the privilege to be at that table, if you don't see community members there, just call out and make sure that they are going to be somebody that represents them, because the community always, they have a say and they know what is best for their community. So it's important to have them at the table always. Said on energy efficiency and building electrification can do to better support and collaborate with organizations like yours. What actions are most impactful in ensuring that BIPOC-led initiative receives the resources and recognitions they deserve?
When we're talking about what the larger organizations can do better to support and collaborate with us, I want to highlight that a lot of times CBOs like C5 and Flip Inc. are good enough to do program design, and it's to help submit the funding documents or to get the grants or cooperative agreements, but we're not good enough to implement the program, right? And to work on those programs. So I think first and foremost, being able to actually generate the boots on the ground impact that we're already doing, right? And being included in that process of the actual project. And so we're seeing that that is not happening. So I think that would be significant. That's the first thing I want to point out. Being included in legislative actions, right? Again, we are boots on the ground. We're doing the work, but recently I was sitting on the U.S. Department of Labor's Leaders and Builders Summit for Region 2, and I represented the state of Virginia, literally of talking about federal investments and how they're getting to the participants. And, we talked about um, ensuring that boots on the ground organizations like us were doing the work. I interact and engage with the workforce system at multiple levels, at the labor workforce pool level, at the educational training provider level with community colleges, as well as with employer partners. And then you have executive directors of the labor workforce system, right? So that's 4 different levels I interact with, and I'm seeing so much. And then you have other organizations that may interact with one level. So they're not fully understanding what goes into these workforce development programs when they're doing these designs. And so making sure that we have that recognition, making sure that we're acknowledged, that we're included past the design process to actually ensure that the community is receiving the benefits or the population is receiving the benefits of what these federal and state investments were meant for. I think that is how they can better support and collaborate, making sure that we're connected to organizations. Again, we can train and give somebody a job all we want, but if there is no sustainment mechanisms in place after the fact, one barrier for the populations that we're heavily serving and what these funding opportunities are for, it will all fall apart, right? One barrier, one obstacle can make it fall apart. And we haven't even touched upon populations that have substance abuse issues, right? That's a whole another animal. And in these populations, that we're the vulnerable populations that we're targeting for these investments as well, fall into place, right? So we have to make sure that we're connected with those employers and also those support mechanisms past the initial investment, because we don't want it to be a one and done type of thing. We want these programs to be successful and want them to continue and be replicable models as well. And also amplification at the organizational level and leadership voice level, making sure that we're present like we are here on platforms and panels like this, making sure that people and or other organizations across the nation are aware of our work and the impact that we do make. And I feel that that would strengthen a lot of the collaborations. I feel like that would help move forward a lot of the initiatives that we do spearhead. And also within our network, making sure we collaborate. Like C5, one thing I can count on Lavisha, and she can count on me, is saying, I'm going to bring Ray in, or I'm going to bring Lavisha in. And so I think we have that strong bond that we've developed and will continue to expound upon. And so I really like the fact that I've met her in this sector and in this network. So just making sure we connect amongst ourselves when we're talking about, BIPOC leaders in the same sector or same industry, and that we're not competing, because a lot of times that will happen too. And so I think that, bigger organizations can ensure that there is healthy collaboration between us as well, and how we can have synergistic opportunities that live past on initial partnerships or initial introductions.
So yeah, so I will definitely say that one of the things that I want people to understand, that when they see a minority, small woman in BIPOC community organization or a business, I want to make sure they understand that we're here because we want to be here, and that we're here to serve our community directly. That's our number one focus. We're not here to threaten any type of capacity or your workload or take anything from you, right? We're here to assist and be a collaborating partner. And I think that's one of the things that big energy companies and other companies that are in this work that are applying for funding, that are looking for the opportunities to work in our communities, is to work with us because we know what our communities want. And I want to also make sure that people understand the one thing that I can say as a leader in a community that I am more fearful and that I'm going to gatekeep as much as possible is that I have my community's trust because I'm in the community. I'm walking in the community. I'm walking around. They see me in the grocery store and they're holding me accountable. So if you want to come into my community, just as if I were to come into your home, you're going to vet me and make sure that I'm going to do what's right for this home and I'm going to protect and I'm going to elevate it if you're going to come into my community. So the C5 Project Black model is that we're here to train our people so that we can become part of the solution. And so I feel like if we're going to have any type of organizations who are going to work with us, you have to be willing to talk to us. You cannot, as Ray talked about, you cannot come in and just give us dangle something in front of us and think that we're just going to open the floodgates to our communities because we've been here. We know the problems. We want to create the solutions. So when you're coming to us, know that we're solution based. We're not investigative, right? As Ray implemented, we don't need to be a part of the design. We already know the design. We already know what has to be done. We're ready to work. So I just need you to come in and partner with me and let me do the work that I can do. And if I'm not meeting your standards, let's talk about it. And let's train so that I can meet your standards. But I am a partner. I am not a benefit of your product. And I think that's the thing that gets a lot of times misconstrued with our conversations is that they're looking at us as an avenue to get into our community and not a partner to the solutions in our community. So if they want to come in and work with our organizations, I think the one thing they need to recognize is that you're coming in to help us do the work for our community. And just as you are an organization, we are an organization, but we also know the answers. So we want to use your subject matter experts, your techniques, your policies that you develop, and we want to use that, the ones that apply to us, to make sure that that's there. For example, and the need for people to be in energy efficiency is huge in electrification, right? And solar. The demand is it's just outlandish how much is needed. There is a 2-year backlog on weatherization in the state of Virginia. And yet, there's not a lot of workforce going into it. So I'm prayerful that the TREC grant will open opportunities for like organizations like myself who are actually paying out of our pocket to do the work. Right? We're actually doing weatherization, and we're having an event on next week that the Sierra Club made possible to partner with us to give us funding to make direct impact. So I think instead of looking at us as an obstacle or as if we're taking from you, look at the fact that we're doing the work and we're going to be able to expand your capacity by working with us. We're here to help and implement, and then your results are directly impacted. So I think if we change that narrative a bit, that we're not a competitor, as Ray said, I don't train solar. I don't want to train solar. That's not what I do, but I know who to go to get it done. Just as if Ray needs weatherization and she needs to know how it's done, she's going to give me a call and I want to tell her exactly what I'm facing, barriers, all that. But together, we've now covered 2 areas that are lacking infrastructure and solutions, and we've just covered 2 areas by having a conversation. So I think just by learning from that simple model, we can cover more ground and we can make bigger impacts if we all know our avenues, do our jobs, and be willing to participate on an equal level and not a hierarchy.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate all the information that everybody's sharing in the panel. I'm gonna go ahead with some questions from the public. Look at the time that we have left. So the first one is for Ray. There's a couple of questions. If does Flip has any national partners, and the other one is if you are working on creating training programs in vocational or technical high schools in areas where many of these projects are being considered.
Okay. So the first question is, we don't have any additional national partners. No, we are heavily seeking them. We would love to have some. That helps with rapid expansion, as well as delivering more quality programs outside of our current footprint that we do work in. So we are looking for some. Please feel free to reach out. Additional on, are we putting programs and working on curriculum, putting them in vocational and technical high schools. We recently have been a part of a partnership with cooperative agreement with the U.S. Department of Energy, Train Technologies, as well as Richmond Public Schools. So that is being um, finalized. We're in the negotiation phase right now. And then we are also working with C5. Lavisha was gracious enough to loop flipping in for some some other Richmond public schools as well as Charles City County school system also. So we do have curriculum in place for that short answer. And then we are working on a couple projects with our partner organizations.
Thank you for that. The other one is also a little bit related with this, and they would like to know if flipping is in communities with a network of similar organizations. At the beginning of the question, the person refers to a program. DEO works with developers to impact communities in the development of innovative energy projects, and they attempt to connect developers with local workforce development pipelines. And they were wondering if Flipping is in a community with a network of similar organizations.
So we are, working with through Black Owners of Solar Services in a program for energy and equitable initiative with U.S. Department of Energy as well. And so we are working through that program to do additional innovative projects such as EV charging stations at our Dillwyn location. It is an old gas station. We still have the gas pumps there. And that is also where we do our on-site training. There is a training building behind our main office building. So we're working on programs such as that. In my capacity on the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council, where I chair the workforce committee, we're working on innovative programs, bringing in developing contractors for the energy efficiency track. Lavisha and C5 or in her project Black is a part of that as well. They're also members of Virginia Energy Efficiency Council. So we're steadily working on more innovative programs to put in place and additional curriculums to help expand those types of programs as well. And we're always seeking additional partners at the private level, local government level, as well as the federal government level to include more work with U.S. Department of Labor and U.S. Department of Energy.
Thank you very much. The next question is, let's see, it says, in rural communities, before we can fully develop a green workforce, we need to build the infrastructure for renewable energy. Solar farms have been a sensitive hot topic. That's true. How can we balance building renewable energy infrastructure with preserving agricultural land in rural communities? What strategies ensure these efforts are seen as equitable and beneficial? Let's
I'm
start
gonna
with
take that
McKenna.
one,
Okay, go ahead.
We're doing that now. So we're doing agrivoltaics in our community because yes, you do have to put in infrastructure, right? So we have to do, there's two things, right? You have to develop the strategy first and then you implement the strategy, right? You have to have a concept and implementation. So what we're doing on our farm is we're building a concept for agrivoltaics that will allow us to create energy while we grow our food under these devices, right? And so the goal of our program is that we're not only creating jobs because we're creating solar install crews. We have people who are managing our systems. We have a database that we are going to have where we can actually monitor our system remotely on Bluetooth, right? Those Bluetooth and things like that, we don't have to have infrastructure in place. However, our operations is mobile. So our agrivoltaic concept is that we have our infrastructure where we're able to make our infrastructure mobile But the parts that we have to develop further are getting the distribution requirements under control. So for your point, you're absolutely correct. If and Ray and McKenna and Gustavo will tell you that by, when they come to our community, they buy up our farmland and they put solar there, and it destroys prime farm food land. Yeah. That we can use. And I'm sorry, I'm not a person who's going to eat the laboratory grown meat. I'm a country girl. I want to see it walking around before I slaughter it. So I'm not going to do that. So what I am going to do is I'm going to develop energy that we're going to make about 1 megawatt for every 5 acres of property that we have. And we're going to create energy and store it in a battery operation until we can get on the distribution line from our local utility company. So that way they can't say that it's a concept anymore. We're actually practicing and doing the strategy. So once you can show that you can do it, then they can't turn you away from creating it. So right now, with the amount of developments that are happening in the PV world, we are providing that strategy of creating energy, doing it in a sustainable way, showing how we're able to still grow our foods, do our cover crops, make sure the soils are remediated and they're going back and being replenished. But now we're also creating energy, and we don't need you to put your product into our ground and then leave it when you're done with your energy production. Now you can move it and we can create foods and create energy at the same time. So those are one of the strategies that we're doing, as well as, like I said, working with Ray and creating more innovative ways to use solar and to also use geothermal when it's applicable and can be used in the right context. So that's how we look at our strategies for that.
I really love that answer, Lavisha and Gustavo. I think that's such an important and timely question, especially with this panel focused on BIPOC rural leaders and the unique challenges that their communities face. And to get to the core of it, as Lavisha spoke on earlier, balancing renewable energy infrastructure with the preservation of agricultural land is really about intentional planning and ensuring that local rural voices, not just urban perspectives and statewide mandates, are central to the conversation. We can't just parachute in solar farms and expect them to be accepted without understanding the local context, especially in communities that are heavily reliant on agriculture. And individuals watching this may ask, okay, so how do we go about ensuring that balance? And to that, I say one way to start is by looking at marginal or underutilized lands. And instead of immediately turning to productive farmland, we should prioritize areas that aren't ideal for agriculture, but are suitable for solar. And there's this really exciting approach that Lavisha just talked about, on the other hand, called agrivoltaics, where we're installing solar panels in ways that let farmers continue to grow crops or allow their livestock to graze underneath. It's creating a dual use of land, which speaks directly to rural priorities, keeping the land productive while contributing to energy generation. And that is a very important tenet in development in general, especially sustainable development, because there isn't an unlimited amount of money. So we need to have dual purpose uses of land and initiatives in general. And it's on the equity side of it, with the question, how do we make sure that rural and BIPOC communities see the benefits? Equity is key here. We need to ensure that community voices, like we were talking about, are part of the decision-making process. That's a part of a central tenet of environmental justice. The distributive dimension, the representative dimension. And often we see that these projects get pushed through, as Lavisha said, without meaningful input to local farmers. And we see this, exacerbated because many rural areas do not have access to broadband data. And this creates resistance. And instead, if we engage the community early on and often, ask what they need and what concerns that they have, we can directly shape projects that we feel are more like a partnership and less something that is being imposed on them. And how does that happen on the ground? Because, as Lucia and Ray alluded to earlier, a lot of it is lip service, and that is disheartening for communities. And I hear that it has to go beyond just asking for opinions. It's about creating long-term economic opportunities. With how Gustavo voiced the point of the objectives of this conversation earlier, For example, when we're building this infrastructure, prioritization of local workers is important. I'll go back to the project labor agreement suggestions and recommendations I spoke on earlier, and we need to ensure that these jobs are well paying with pathways for growth. That is how you keep workers um, supporting their communities and keeping it local. And that is where BIPOC leadership can really shine, developing programs that train local workers and ensuring that they have access to these new green jobs. And we can't say that this doesn't exist because both Ray and Lavisha are incredible trailblazers in this regard. And it's not just about building solar farms after all, it's truly about building local economies.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just to wrap it up, we have a few minutes left. I wanna start thinking and looking at the future. And this is an open question for the panel. What is missing in order to continue and incentivize similar programs to the ones that you are doing? Could you share some? You already shared some examples, but could you give us some examples of these programs or how these are benefiting the rural communities?
I'll chime in. So one thing I did leave out in the initial introduction is flipping is one of 5 NABCEP accredited training providers in the state of Virginia. But more importantly, we are the first woman led organization in the state of Virginia, as well as the first BIPOC led organization in the state of Virginia that is a training provider. And why that is significant to this question is it demonstrates that with the educational opportunities and the know-how of what we were up against, I faced swift opposition for that, right? So I'm able to demonstrate a positive reference point for my community. I'm able to demonstrate that here I see that this community may be exploited, right? We faced the Atlantic Coastal Pipeline at one point in Buckingham County, right? And that is when I first came back to Virginia in 2019, and I saw a need that was there. I saw that my community was in the same position or same stagnant place that it was in 1997 when I left and went into the military, right? And so being a trailblazer and leading the way, I had to do it for my community and for these populations to benefit. So I had to do it for the people that came before me that were turned away, and for the people that may come after me that want to help in the renewable energy sector, that want to help their community economic mobility as well. And I think that my story is significant because it gives real world examples of what is really going on, right? And even once we got that accreditation, validating how important our training is, validating how important our mission and initiatives are, and validating and why people should even do business with us, right? It was just it's really important to be a leader in that sector. And I know we're running short on time, so I'm gonna pass the mic, but it was just these are programs and models that should be replicated and even expanded to further increase those community benefits and those advantages for communities for long-term success.
So I'm going to also just, say that what's missing is access. That's what's missing, right? Because we're here, our hands are raised, we're on panels. And also what's missing is working directly with us. That's what's missing. Again, like I said, when I say work with us, I don't mean come in and give us some swag and tell us how great your company is. Like literally partner with us, which that means that it's not only a commitment of time, but there's also a financial commitment, because just as people are getting paid to do their work, we need to be paid for our work, because we're doing the boots on the ground, which is the most time consuming, the hardest part that goes into the project. So as Ray said, the reason why our programs are successful, the reason why we're able to create these programs, and the reason why we can get into these weeds that most people don't consider is because we live it, right? I did not come and develop Project Black. When I met McKenna in college, my goal was never to do workforce. My goal was to stop something from coming to my community that was going to be throwing pollutants on us on top of the landfill we already had. because of what they said about us and why they said it about us, it made me feel that, you know what I'm doing, I need to get back into our history, because Charles City was founded on freedmen. We were the first area that had freedmen that were actually here to build America. So we need to go back to our roots. And so access, we're doing it. And I would also just go and jump to say, we don't need you to replicate our programs. We need you to use our programs, right? Ray's doing an amazing job. She doesn't need someone else to create what she's doing. We just need to partner with her. I'm doing weatherization, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, agriculture, environmental monitoring. I don't need you to look at my program and then take it and put it in your grant. I need you to work with me, because I know exactly what needs to be done. And why do I know that? Because I'm doing it every day. I'm talking to the very people who are calling Ray and I and saying, and McKenna and Gustavo, and saying, I can't find work. I can't do this. I want to get into this. How do I do that? And then we have the responsibility of making sure that when they go through a program, they don't get a certificate and a thank you. They actually get a life-changing job that's going to sustain environmental work. And that's what we're here to do. Is that I hear about all the funding. I meet organizations all the time that says, Lavisha, oh my God, you need to be getting funding for this. We need to be doing this. Well, guess what? Lavisha can't get access to it. But Lavisha's going to still do the work. And I think if we look at the fact that Ray and I are able to do so much with so little, imagine if we had access to the same access of other organizations, what the impact could do. Maybe the one person that we're bringing up and we're making successful could maybe be 10, and maybe one day 100. So I think the access and the partnerability of our program, if we could get that, I think that that's game changers for CBOs.
Thank you, and well say, Lavisha and Ray. I really appreciate McKenna also for all the information that you have shared. We are in the last minute. I just want to wrap it up and tell people that are watching this or that are going to watch this in the future that, as you can see, there are here some examples of things that could happen in the county, in the rural areas. There is opportunities. This is not, if you have heard, if you live in a rural area, that they tell you there is no opportunities and we have to put up with a landfill or other pollutants. No, here are other opportunities that will bring jobs and develop economic development in the area. Thank you very much.